Today's guest is the person that brought the Rise Physio and Rise Fitness brands to life. He taught about everything from brand colors, logo, what the brand should mean and represent, as well as our tone of voice and what that's going to be all about. With nearly 2 decades of experience in brand building and creative design, Matthew has helped numerous local brands build what they're all about. Whether consolidating an existing brand or building one from the ground up, he's a master of creating cohesiveness and memorable identities for each brand he works with. Interestingly, he's also a competitive rugby player, having captained the great Stompers Rugby Club and represented the Maltese national team on numerous occasions. Above all else, he's someone I'm so proud to have completed some of the most fulfilling moments in my life with, from climbing mountains together and volunteering in Africa, to representing our club and winning national championships in rugby, as well as playing numerous national team games together. I'm so proud and happy to be filming this episode. Matthew Spiteri, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great to be here. Very strong intro.
People won't understand and know that I did that in a couple of takes, but hey, we have to be as transparent as possible. Matt, I'll jump straight into it. And this is a question a lot of people ask me personally, knowing that I've put a lot of effort into turning Rise into a brand, obviously with a lot of help from your end. Obviously you do, but just how important is brand building? Is it something that companies should be thinking about? Is it a must-have or just something nice to have?
Obviously, for me, brand building is important. But there are brands that don't engage what we are calling brand building and still are successful. And that mostly comes down to being at the right place, at the right time, having the right cost and the right product. But these people are successful and they don't feel they need brand building.
Okay. Can any business build a brand, or is it something that a select few have the identity to do? Do you feel anyone could in reality build a brand? Is it something that you could help anyone do or any company do?
I think everyone has a brand. Whether you like it or not, or consciously engaging in brand building, you have a brand. Even the plumber has a brand. It's your daily interactions. It's how you behave yourself, the little details. If you're a plumber, if you wear a polo shirt with your logo on, if you don't, these things are all components in brand building. And we obviously need to separate what sometimes everyone refers to as a brand, which is the visual, the logo, the identity, the nice stuff, and all other components that are very, very important that people sometimes seem to overlook or miss.
So like the essence of a brand versus the aesthetics and the visual representation of a brand, that's what you're talking about.
Exactly, sort of the brand value. So a brand is essentially a perception. And it's not what you think about, it's what other people think about it. So a brand lives in other people's minds, not in yours. So you need to make sure that you get into that space with how you behave, what you portray, what you do, and the details you put out relating to your brand.
Okay, and is brand building or the building of a brand something that is only for companies who want to grow what they currently have? Or is there purpose for a company that's happy where they are and they just want this external perception? Do you only work with companies who really want to grow and scale?
I work with all kinds of companies and people or companies, organizations who want to grow really do need to have a brand in place and they do need the foundations in place. But it's not just businesses who want to grow, even businesses that want to build the tribe, around their business, the community, and create this long-term connection with the customers or attract customers who they want to be part of their tribe. I think that's very important.
Okay, so there's a lot about retention of clients here. So building a brand is something
attraction,
that helps you.
And then after that, retention. Because if you do the brand identity part, which is the part that I would come in at if I'm working with you. But then, your brand foundation, your brand values, the mission and the vision, they're all mixed up, they're not clear. Or maybe your employees are not sharing the same mission and vision. That becomes clear and that becomes disjointed. So then the retention won't happen.
Okay, and you're touching upon a point that I really wanted to speak to you about, which is this psychological aspect of brand building. And it sounds like it's something you have to do almost to understand, like how do you get in there with a company and understand their psychology, understand what's going on in this company and what that's going to look like to the public? Like, what's that all about?
Before any branding project that we do, it's a non-negotiable that we go in, we talk to people, interview most likely the founder or the top management, the leadership, to understand a bit their thought process, what they do in the business, how they do it, if there's an attention to detail. More often than not, you get sort of this cooperation from them, and it's great to have it. Sometimes you don't get this cooperation, which sort of leads to, this saying, are they ready for this exercise?
Okay.
But we sort of have these methods in place through a workshop that we facilitate or bring out these values. If they don't have these values or they haven't thought about it, it would be great for us to sort of extract those values or even help them write them down. And more often than not, it helps them, create their core focus so that they know what their mission and vision is and what their value is.
So there's really a lot more to this than just the concept of sitting in your studio and coming up with colors and artwork. There's a whole psychological principle behind it you need to understand.
Exactly. And I think the brand identity is it's a very important component, but it's not the only one, and it's almost kind of not the smallest one, but on its own it can't work. There's a book called The Brand Gap. I suggest it to anyone who likes these things, in the psychology and delving into all details of what makes a brand. And Marty, the author, says the sweet spot is right between the creativity and the strategy. You need to bring those together, and it's not too much strategy. It's not too much identity or creativity. It's the sweet spot in the middle, sort of, that makes that difference.
And is that where brands can go wrong? So in this process of creation, or after that process and the brand is alive and around, is that where kind of things can go a bit sketchy if they go too much into the strategy component or too much into the creative component and ignore the roots?
If you go too much into the strategy component and not too much into the creativity and identity, then you have a business which no one knows about. If you go too much into the identity and create this impression or this perception, and people come to your business, but then you don't deliver, then you won't have the retention. You won't build a tribe, and you don't have the connection. People probably won't, experience your brand again, or will leave an insane amount of time until they're convinced to maybe try again.
Trust you. Yeah. I mean, after these couple of minutes of discussion, it sounds like there's a massive difference between brand as a word and just the creation of a logo. I think a lot of people kind of have this mindset that I just need a logo for my company and that's where Matthew and Sancho are going to come in. But in reality, it sounds like it's much deeper than that.
So how do we successfully perform our job? It's translating the values into the visual. We use the tools and sort of these design perceptions that are accepted worldwide. Sometimes not, sometimes we push the boundaries. I think we'll talk about that when we talk about Rise as well. But we need to create the perception beforehand of what you're all about. So when people see the logo, and it happens, you're in the supermarket, you see packaging and you say, this is going to be good. If you go home, open the packet and it's not good, that's not
expectation.
That's what I call success. Exactly. So if we perform our job well, what you see in front of you is translated into the experience. And when you go there, you say, okay, I understand. It all seems, like one big thought out, brand company.
Yeah, so it's a lot more than just wallpaper kind of thing. It's not just a wrapping. It's reflecting the brand's real values, the depth, like what it's all about. If it's a service-based industry, then kind of the customer experience. If it's a product, what that product should represent. It's a lot more than just putting something pretty over something and hoping for the best.
Exactly. It's a nice to have, but it's also nicer if the feeling that they are getting from the visuals are also reinforced with the experience.
Cool. I mean, obviously, when we started working professionally, I kind of came to you not really knowing what I wanted or needed, and you very much directed me there with creating, first of all, the Rise Physio brand, what is now the Rise Physio brand. And I feel it's almost by mistake, we created something first of its kind in Malta, where a physiotherapy clinic, someone working mainly in healthcare, wanted to create this understandable and definitive brand. So how do you feel that came to life? Did it need to come to life? Kind of what's the background of the story there from your side of things?
I think it was very exciting that we were able to brand something that people, sometimes people have this, it's a physio clinic, you know, it needs to be very simple. It needs to have a little man jumping because, you know, he's happy, he's fixed, and he's not hurting anymore. Um, and that is what people accept, you know, if I'm opening a physio clinic, that's what it should look like, you know. And for me, like, no, like, totally wrong. And when I get the opportunity to, first of all, like, represent someone like yourself, where you came in, you were not just a physio, but you're also one of the first talking about prevention, moving better, you know? It's not just when you're hurt, you go and you get yourself fixed. It's not something that, my leg's hurting me, I need to go to a physio. But no, if you're an athlete, prepare yourself, learn to run better so you don't get injured, learn to stretch better so you don't get injured. And I thought, you know, this is a like new way of thinking, you know? And for me, it was a big opportunity and quite exciting to say, okay, it's time to like bring down the status quo. Like, where do we go from here, you know? And that's sort of what drove it, and that's why it was important that we give this now what is a physio brand, not just a clinic, to life.
That's so interesting. I mean, I really remember clearly you sending me the first drafts of the logo, and I'm like, what is he doing here? You know, so even for me, it was really surprising to see this complete change, these different colors, these fonts, these selection of design criteria. So I think it was very innovative by you to be thinking in that way. And I do really have to say that that was something that really came from your end. I mean, it's quite interesting to see things in that direction. And the next step after that, when we came to Rise Fitness, how things changed. I remember you clearly telling me, like sending me the Rise letters, those 4 letters, but in italics, because you wanted to represent movement through
Exactly.
through kind of, because we're working more in the fitness industry now rather than a more static medical industry. So I think that's so interesting from your end.
I think it's nice how they blended together, but it also was easy for me. I mean, these quirks come to me because the Rise Physio brand, when we started, we sort of created something that could be, you know,
Played around with.
yeah, played
changed.
around with, you know, and changed. For example, the Rise logo. Most people tell me, like, what does it mean? So the lines are, if you see a muscle, it is made up of a lot of strands. So I wanted to do something with that, definitely. And then I said, if I take this star and every time, like, it's a repetition. I think there are 25 stars that make up one big star next to the Rise type, and each time it's rotating and becoming bigger, and that's, you know,
Growth.
it's a slow process, growth. With the look, it was clear that where you wanted to go, you're going to attract the sporty type and people who want to perform in sport, you know, and want to be prepared. And not get injured and not having these, you know, we know that injuries can be sort of
Game changers.
career
and stuff,
killing
you know.
for some people. So I wanted it to have that sport inclined look. And then obviously to change into the fitness was, you know, was easy for us because the brand could be played around.
With. So there was a thought process already that this might need to be shifted into other industries, into other areas. And with the original Rise brand, was there like an aha moment where you're like, this is it? Or was it more like slow, sloggy, took time to come up with the fonts, the colors, what was that creative process like for you?
I think if I've done more than 100 brands, I have more than 100 stories of how the brands came about. The Rice brand, no, I think I knew what I wanted to do and I arrived there quite quickly. If I'm not, it's just, you know, moving things around, moving some parts around, but I really had this clear vision in my head. But it's not always the case. I mean, sometimes we iterate a lot before we arriving to something, and you iterate something and you say, this is the one, you know, I'm landing on this. And sometimes we have exercises where, you know, are particular. For example, Amigos brand comes to life. How we went about that process is that I had just seen a documentary on Netflix where the guy who designed the Instagram logo did this exercise every morning where they, without touching anything, drew the logos that they decided on yesterday without any reference in a 10-second sketch. And I said, how can I overcome this challenge? With Amigos, I had the previous brand it had a lot of stuff in it, 3 people, hats, cactuses. And I said, like, how can I sort of streamline this brand? How can I make it unique and have something which is not complicated, complex, but not complicated. And I said, what do I keep from all these elements? And I said, you know what? Let me ask 50 people what they remember from the Amigos logo. And I think 40 out of 50 people came back, drew one hat, wrote Amigos under it, and I said, this is, no, I can sign, it has to be this. But from then, that step onward, like we iterated 150 hats, went back, combined some other hats, you know, because it was Mexican with New York influence, so I wanted the Mexican hat, but also the fedora, so I mixed them together. And that's how sort of I worked the story into it.
And is there often conflict with the founder of the brand when it comes to logo creation? Like, do they often trust you, or is there often a lot of back and forth where there's this element of, I'm not sure, I don't know if this is me? How does that usually work?
Some people trust you completely. Some people also sweated, you know, in the brand and are really, really connected with the brand. And sometimes change can be scary for them. And I understand that. So it is, I think, very important that when someone is very connected to the brand, you touch point with them. You know, you have milestones that you communicate on. You know, sometimes before we even start anything, we give some mood boards on sort of the feeling that we want the logo to give, and we make them choose a direction early on without even having designed anything, and then move forward to, you know, creating a couple of options from there, and so that sort of we have maximum feedback from the client.
Of course.
But each story is different.
It's different.
Each story is different.
And of course, with us, I mean, when it came to creating the Rise brand, we had already been friends for quite a few years, obviously through rugby, having some of the best times of our lives with rugby. How did you start playing rugby? So how did that journey into sport come to life? Did you play other sports before? Kind of, what's that all about?
I think I did the norm where everyone plays football when they're young, but I wasn't necessarily a sports person. I had a couple of friends that always messaged me, why don't you join? You love rugby, I think it's perfect for you. I think they would bug me a lot because they knew how much I would click with the sport.
Okay, so it was very much like that almost peer pressure element which pushed you into it. And that led to what, 15 years of playing rugby? You're still playing rugby now?
Almost.
So that's quite impressive. And it's obviously a very high contact physical sport. Injuries are part of it. Do you feel that rugby is too physical at times? Do you enjoy that side of things, or do you wish that there was a little bit more regulation around the amount of contact in the game?
I think the physical aspect of it is what makes it rugby, you know. The game, the core pillar of the game is domination. Ultimately, it's you know, dominating the opponent to get the ball to the other side, and the physical is you know, the most important tool.
Of course.
To exert the domination.
To get there. No, totally. I've never thought of it in that way, but it's very true. And what I do see from, obviously, same thing, 15, 20 years of rugby, is although there is this huge physical element, it tends to breed respect and dedication like very few other sports do. So this highly physical element, I know it's the same in a lot of other physical sports, almost builds a bond with your opponent. So that almost leads you to this culture where you want to be friends with the person that you play against as well, which I don't think happens as much in other sports.
The respect was a big part of it. I mean, it's a value that I held to my heart. And I loved how, first of all, the referee is God in the field. Like, you don't disrespect the referee. It's the number one rule. I think you don't get it a lot with other sports, and it's a shame. You know, so it's a physical domination side, but there's also this element of respect. Which I liked, you know. And as soon as the whistle stops, you're shaking the other guy's hand. More often than not, you probably had a scuffle, but you still go and you still shake his hand. There's no hard feelings. You drink a beer together, and that's done. Chapter closed. Very
true. And talking about a beer after, obviously the post-rugby culture, like a lot of people associated rugby with this excessive drinking culture. I mean, we've both been there, we've both had our times doing this. Do you feel that that's too excessive? Do you feel like there's too much of it associated with amateur rugby, or do you feel it's a part that almost goes hands in hand and is essential?
I remember when I the first thing I did with Stompers Rugby is, I think, before even coming to a training session, I think I came to a pub crawl, and you know, it's the part that drew me in and kept me there at times. I think it's an essential part, first of all, of building, you know, the team bonding, because you know, every time you are expected to be there after the match to have a beer with, first of all, your opponent and your team. And at that time, obviously, we were young and you're going out anyways, and having this sort of 25 men, ensemble, drinking beers, making fun of each other, it was something that kept me going.
Definitely. I mean, I can't promote that you're drinking excessive alcohol or any of that, but I mean, my viewpoint, I'm being 100% honest. I do feel that having that group of friends around me helped me to stay in sports. And nowadays we're seeing more and more problems with kids quitting sport because they want to go out, or they want to focus on other things. So that's definitely one of the things that kept me there, having this massive community of people that I really respected and staying around that. And secondly, believe it or not, especially in my teens and 20s, I went out less because of rugby, because I knew if my friends were out on a Wednesday night, I have training on Thursday. I don't want to be there. If my friends are out on a Friday night, I have a game on a Saturday. I don't want to do anything which is going to affect my performance on the Saturday. So it's true that there is the post-game culture, but there could almost be an argument towards like it is pushing health to some extent, keeping people in sport and helping them there, obviously outside of excess.
I think revisiting how Stompers was as a club, yes, we went out on a Saturday after the game, but we never went out on a Friday, and that was religion for us, even if we're going out to eat with friends, not even one glass of wine, and that was non-negotiable.
Definitely. And I think it was a big part of, and still is a big part of the culture, that you want to perform, you don't want to let your mates down, and although you're playing at an amateur level, you're trying to be as professional as possible. And especially around national team, we saw that more and more, and I'm sure we'll speak about that. But you spoke to me a bit about the fact that rugby, you feel, changed you as a person, or if not, accentuated certain traits in you, which you still feel come out in your life today. Could you tell me a bit more about that? Like, what was that journey like for you?
I think rugby has, first of all, rugby is a big game of chess, I believe, and to dominate, you need to instill some, non-negotiables in how you play or decision making, if you want to be better, that is. And I think once you apply them in the game, you realize that, listen, you need to live these
Values.
these traits, these values, not just implement them in the game. And most often than not, I like to say this, that most people who excel in rugby also excel at their success in life as well. I see it a lot. I feel it as well.
Definitely. I mean, one of the big things I look for when I come to recruit, when I'm looking for physios or people to work at Rise, is a background in sports. I feel that having that discipline that comes from sport is something huge. And I think both of us have been highly taught these things by one of our original national team coaches, Damien Neal, and he's instilled a lot of values, I think, in both of us. There are some which stick in your mind and some which stick in mine. So when we were preparing for this, it was nice to see kind of which values we both remembered. And you mentioned a big one, which is that when we trained with national team and then went back to club, you really wanted to teach the people at club level, at kind of the lower level of rugby, the same things you learned from national team. So was that one of the things that...
I think I want to say hello from here to Damien, because I think he was one of the anchor characters in our life, and we were fortunate sort of to experience being coached by him. I think training with Damien and you get these nuggets of wisdom or these statements with him as well. It was all about controlling the controllables, and more often than not, it's the details that you didn't think of. So yes, certain aspects of how he used to, put a perspective on something. For example, he's like, always be first. If there's a line to do an exercise, always be first. If you're thinking about something twice, you're probably already too late. These things stay in your mind, and you feel like, oh, like this could guide me. It's a principle that could guide me. So. Then we went back down to the club, you feel like you have to impart this wisdom onto the other players, and that somehow gives you this sort of leadership role.
Definitely.
Most often than not.
Definitely, and it really comes out, and it's also very interesting that we're not talking about a national team coach or a mentor, because in reality he takes a figure as a mentor of, I want to teach you how to pass better or kick the ball better. It's really the underlying value which is making the big difference. So that's forming your character, forming your psychology, and then the result of scoring a try or passing the ball well is almost a given because you were there 5 minutes early for training, you're the first one to the ball, you always want to leave a place better than you find it, and that it's always
Exactly, you know, and he would come down in the morning. Okay, you did well, but what if you, instead of sleeping at midnight, you slept at 11? What if you slept at 10? What if you got down early and prepared your bag before? You wouldn't be late on the bus. You know, you always arrive to somewhere, I feel, and then he opens up a new set of, unlocks a new level
Variables.
to achieve. That's what I liked about him because, and he would put it in such a way, like, what if you do this? Like, you could be better at that. You know, what if you go down 30 minutes before a training session and actually kick some balls up in the air and catch them, you know? And these are the things that sometimes I hear him in my head, you know?
Definitely.
I remember as well during COVID times, he used to get in touch and he's like, what are you doing? I told him, what can I do? I'm stuck at home. And he's like, you know what I do? I earn points to do stuff. And he's like, if I want to eat something from the microwave, I have to do 30 push-ups, you know? So he would implement this system for himself. And I think that's where he's great at putting these
Quite a
perspectives.
master. Yeah, definitely. I mean, from knowing you quite well, I feel that these kinds of experiences are one of the things that have now led you to be an entrepreneur, to lead a company of 10 people and have Sancho alive for almost the last 10 years now. So that's, I mean, a massive achievement. And you're obviously working on growing impactful brands. You're trying to keep your creative edge. Is that challenging at times? Like new clients are coming in. Does it stay tough to manage your team, to keep creating positive change in society and to keep your company alive and running well?
I think managing people is always a challenge, you know. But you try to get by as best you can. Being a creative environment, it's an added level of challenges, I feel. But yes, I keep my creative edge by being hands-on. At least once a week, twice a week, I'm hands-on in the project. I do some stuff myself. If the team needs help, I'm there. I also deal with the high-level ideas, you know, when we start to plan for projects, whether it being big or small. But yes, I stay very much, you know,
On the ball.
Yes.
And obviously, you've been now in the industry for 10 years, like we were saying. Do you see shifts or changes in consumer behavior? So are people coming to you and asking different questions, having different needs? Are people more or less focused on brand building?
In the last 10 years, two things that obviously changed how we think about branding and marketing. First of all, social media, which is ever evolving. You know, 10, 15 years ago, Facebook came out, it was okay. Then we started having these, you know, sponsored ads, but very basic. And now there's this sort of plethora of, you know, channels that you need to think of and how you do the content, what you need to have in the content. I think mostly it's about connection, you know, and it's not just about the polished. Before it used to be just about the polished, who has the most polished brand. That's important, but I think the human connection now is really, really important in any material that you push out, especially now with AI as well.
Okay, and I think that's a whole other can of worms now, no? So there's AI generated content, like we don't really know what's real or not on the media we see as well. So that's is it something that's affecting you at Sancho?
I think the market has changed in the last 6 months as well, and I've seen it, and I'm sure anyone in my industry have seen it. Companies are trying to do things themselves, and I don't blame them. We have to embrace AI because it facilitates so much stuff. But you also need to consider, you know, the brand consistency, the brand control. You know, it's not just about how quick you are pushing stuff out, but are you working your mission, your vision, your values, your core focus into the content? Is it working against your brand? Is it giving the perception or, you know, misleading your tribe? I
So
think
that's-
everyone needs to think about that.
That's always a challenge because I guess it's now much easier than ever to just create 10 pieces of content a week, put them out there, not really reviewed, not really aligned with brand, which you spoke so openly about before. So I'm sure that this will be a threat or a challenge to companies moving forward. So
It will be, but if you take care of the human connection, and more now that people are aware of AI and what people can do with AI, it's not that phase where some people know how to use AI and everyone else is, oh, how did you do this? I think we're in a phase where everyone knows, and I'm sure everyone started to realize, oh, this piece of content is made with AI. This email is written with AI. So it is very, very important that you keep your human element in anything that you do. Use AI to help you, to make you more agile, but make sure that you are learning from it more than it is learning from you.
that's a very interesting viewpoint and way to look at things. And even in previous podcasts, we've discussed how the human element, the human connection is one of the few things that it's probable that a robot can't take over or AI can't take over, like it's smarter than us, it's quicker than us, but that human connection is something that I think we really need to keep sacred, and it comes across in brands, it comes across in medicine as well, that you will always want a human to interact with. So that's such a good
Exactly,
thing.
and I'm sure people thought about this, but sometimes you would think, should I leave a typo in this email so that they know that I didn't write it with AI? I think it's a reality that we need to consider.
Definitely. Wow. So we're going to be leaving more typos in emails in the near future. I think it's very interesting that with yourself as an entrepreneur, you juggle so many different balls. You have so many balls in the air at once. So you have 2 kids, you have to look after your home and your family, you're juggling a business, you're still playing sport and physically active. Sometimes there's almost this question of, is it worth opening your own business? Is it worth being an entrepreneur and going down this route? And let's say there's someone, I'm sure there are people listening who are young entrepreneurs, they've just gotten started, they're doing some self-employed work or freelance work. What's your advice to these people? So is it just don't do it? Where are you at now?
Very interesting question. Obviously, I'll take myself, I know that having 2 young kids, I needed to prioritize my life. But I won't fault people for going at it at a 200%. And I did for, the first 5-6 years of the company, when I could. But now, obviously, my priorities shifted, and I need to juggle my time accordingly. And I know I cannot arrive to certain places because I have that in place, but I'm happy sort of living in that bracket. But for people who want to achieve that goal and know that they have to, spend an X amount of time in working on the business, don't be afraid to set up boundaries with family, friends to achieve that goal. Have those boundaries, and also surround yourself with people who get it. It's very, very important. And I did this mistake a million times, probably still doing it now. Surround yourself with people who get it. Even when employing, you need to make sure that people who are coming with you share your values and share this view and perspective on what you are trying to do.
Definitely. And this is once again what we spoke about before. So branding also goes into employer branding. So making sure that your people, your tribe are the tribe who can push you forward and not keep you back.
Exactly. If your employees are not sharing your values, then you don't have a brand,
Of course, 100%. And I mean, one of the really cool things with values, and I just want to kind of read this quote because I feel it's something Sancho and Rise really share. This is from Shoe Dog, from the founder of Nike. It's a fantastic book for people who haven't read it. We want, as all great businesses do, to create, to contribute, and we dare to say so aloud. And what do you feel about this sentiment? Does it guide what you do as work? So we're talking about entrepreneurship, we're talking about kind of perhaps sometimes the motivation of wanting to make more money, to get further in your life. But one of the things that the founder of Nike says is that in reality, great brands, great businesses want to create change. How do you feel about that? Is that something you think about?
It is something I think about. Obviously, let's talk about Malta. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done with regards to the industry that I work in, brand building, the creative sector. Implementing the creativity into your business, and also having the restraints to not go too far, or so that is something I live by, is to work to make businesses buy into this idea of building the brand and having sort of the identity to go with it.
Do you feel it's something that still needs to evolve a lot locally? Do you feel like we're still maybe a little bit further behind the rest of Europe when it comes to the importance of brand building and implementation?
I mean, we live in the center of the Mediterranean, you know, if they go to Sicily, they're also very, very loud, which is something I think that it's not bad, but something that we need to exercise restraint, I feel, sometimes locally, and that is sort of the component that I think we are missing. You know, we try to do too much because it's such a small market. We need to be competitive and noisy, you know, and sometimes we tend to go a bit overboard.
Okay, so that's kind of a local issue that you see, that we're almost a little bit too loud without enough substance. There's too much like shouting about the product, the service.
Exactly. I think it's mostly guided. It's not just we as a people. I think it's guided mostly because the market is so competitive and so small.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
that sometimes it's scary to have like a core focus and going for it.
Definitely. I think, unfortunately, as well, this perhaps pushes a little bit this mentality of not collaborating. So in medicine, it happens definitely. I'm sure it happens in your industry as well, that everyone's afraid to collaborate, to get ideas, to share. And I think it's from that sharing that growth really happens. So it's just something that I really wish to see more of in the near future, that we're more willing to collaborate, to speak, to grow kind of in our industries.
Yes, I think one of the values that we have at Sancho is challenge and support, which means you know, talk about stuff, show your stuff, dare to question what the other guy is doing, but then support him in achieving that goal. And I think collaboration is fantastic. You know, I even try to do it with other agencies because why not? You know, I think when you bump heads, you can jump off each other and create something better. You know, when we have a big branding project and everyone's coming in to give their own ideas on how it should look like, what it should say, you know. If the cleaner is in the office, we bring her in and we make her, you know, give
her feedback,
you know, her opinion on the project. I think it's so important.
Definitely.
And she almost is the perfect candidate to give feedback because she's, you know, she's not inclined, or with our mentality, she's not working in it. There's no bias. Yes.
That's so interesting. And talking about Sancho, what does the future hold for you? So you're a respected brand. You've been around for 10 years. You've created some incredible projects. What would you love your future to look like? So what do you want for Sancho?
Essentially to keep doing what we're doing. Obviously, our main goal is to you know, create experiences for the big brands locally. And manage to sort of touch people's lives with what we do. We already, like, if you go to the supermarket, probably you're experiencing 4 or 5 different products that we made as Sancho, and that for me like gives me purpose. You know, that people are interacting with the creative work that we did.
Okay, and I guess I'm sure that you find that extremely rewarding, and it's something that is a massive part of your life, to see your brands, your ideas come to life in the most real way possible.
I think anyone in the creative sector, I mean, that is the end goal for him, you know, to have something displayed so wide and it's sort of changing people's lives or attracting people towards a business or towards a product. I think that's...
Of course. And from a bigger picture point of view, if you're like looking into this crystal ball of what your industry looks like in the next 5-10 years, like what would you say? What would you say is going to change when it comes to brands, to social media, to marketing? Like, have you had this thought process? Have you thought about it? Are things likely to change a lot in the near future?
It's impossible not to think about, especially with the advent of AI and how it's going to sort of change how we work and what we come up with. And first of all, I expect that, you know, work needs to be more polished, especially from agencies, because people will try to do things themselves. But if there's one thing that an agency or people who work in an agency, you know, they have to have the thought process. So even if you're not physically doing it yourself, you need to have the idea, the prompts, you know, you need to think about what to say to achieve the end goal. And obviously, creative people who are using AI, they're expected to perform more than normal people who use AI, you know, so...
So we're definitely going to see some change in the near future, and we have to be mindful of what we're allowing to change and making sure that we stay true to our identities in reality.
Exactly. Keep your story alive, the human connection, as I said before. That is the thing that people will look for most as AI gets bigger, for sure.
Definitely. Matt, what can I say? Thank you so much for the honesty. Above all else, thank you for helping build the Rise brands and for helping us to serve people better through the hard work that you've done. And for everyone watching and listening, if that has helped, if it's something that you found interesting, please feel free to share it with a friend, subscribe to our channels, and if you do need anything with regards to injury, prevention, and performance, you can find us on risephysio.mt. And for one time, I can say, built my Matthew. Thank you so much.
Thank you.